You have the ability to be engaged in this environment, but not lose your sense of self. Because I was very big into poetry, I was very big into art, I was very big into photography. So when I had my free time, I would always venture back into those worlds, and I never lost track of that inner sense of who I was, despite the fact that I was in this dominant and powerful environment that kind of really controlled your life. I'm not saying that lightly. It controlled your life. There were times in my life when I realized I didn't have a life. My life was defense to the nation, and whatever was required, I had to do. What was my personal concerns or desires was second nature. They were irrelevant. But I kept holding on to that. And I think that's the point. I think what you was trying to say, that's the reality of it. Because of where I came from, I never lost sense of who I was. And no institution was going to transform that. I came from nothing. So nobody was going to dictate to me what I was going to do now.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Ed Andrew. This is Human Impact, and today is episode 142 with Dr. Erek Clacks. Erek is a former US Army major. He's also a professor. He has multiple degrees, and he is now an author and public speaker. Erek shares his own journey, which has taken him from absolute poverty. As he says, he started with absolutely nothing. Probably the only person who knows the depths of his soul, and I've been privileged enough for him to share that with me over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. So I hope you enjoy it. If you're on your own journey of transformation, or you just want to know how if you've lost direction, it's a great opportunity to understand the process and strategy that someone went through to go and realize their vision. So I hope you enjoy it. As usual, if you love it, please leave a review and subscribe. That way more people will get to hear about the show. And if you need to contact me, you can do so at edandrew.com. All the show notes will be on the website, edandrew.com as well. So I hope you enjoy.
And welcome back. I'm Ed Andrew. This is Human Impact. And today I'm very excited to be joined by Professor Erek Clacks. Erek, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Ed.
My pleasure. Now, full disclosure, Erek and I know each other pretty well. Erek has been working with me for the last year or so. And let's first of all talk about, which has been a wonderful experience for me. And Erek, let's talk about your book. So first of all, share the name of the book. And I was privileged enough to write the foreword, so I should disclose that as well. But first of all, Erek, tell us about the book.
Sure, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ed. The title of the book is called Have the Courage to Try, Overcome Adversity and Achieve Your Goals. And what the book is about my personal memoir, but also what I include in there is strategies towards overcoming adversity. And what I really talk about in the book is, my early beginning, growing up in poverty, growing up in a dysfunctional family, having not many role models, especially those in the professional arena, and having a lack of resources towards anything that contribute to me achieving any goals that I had for myself. But the book really goes into detailing how I was able to overcome that, how I was able to navigate, these obstacles that I had presented to me, but didn't use them as excuses or barriers. I just kept finding a way and just kept moving forward. So what it really talks about is, when one have a resolve to achieve a goal, you will find a means to get that resolve accomplished. Talks about overcoming obstacles and also doing personal transformation. So it was truly exciting to have the opportunity to sit down and write this book, because this is something I was thinking about writing for a while now, but never took the time to do it. And thankful to COVID, it presented an opportunity for me just to stop, reevaluate what I'm doing in life. And I had more time on my hands. And what was so funny about that, at the time I was in a project with a colleague, and we were doing a co-author in a scholarly journal. And he had to, stop due to other obligations. And I could have continued on. But what happened at that flash, it was let me jump into this book. Let me jump into this book I've always been thinking about. And then I started, and the floodgates just started. It just, floodgates opened up, and then, woo, one chapter after another, the book just kept flowing. And then next thing you know, it was done. And that's
it didn't
exactly
take you
how it
long.
happened.
It didn't take you long, did it? It was, I guess, 2 months, 2.5, 2 months.
Yes.
Finish.
Yes, the book was done. And then I kind of went into the editing process, and figuring all that out, and and getting it market and things of that nature. But the book really, first draft was kind of done within about 2.5 months.
It's staggering, isn't it? And I think let's explore this a little bit for a while. When we were working together, I know that one of your challenges was, I have a message, and I don't know. I don't know who I want to share it with, and also I don't know how I want to share the message. And like many long-term institutionalized individuals, 20 years in defense, and then 10 years in, I think it was 20 years in defense as a US Army major, and then 10 years in academia, as with all these degrees and your PhD, is that you had been trained to think in a very binary, linear manner, which is I do this, or I do this, or I keep moving along these railway lines effectively. So when you came to me, it's like, Ed, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to do this. It's like, I know that you're going to do neither, but we'll deal with that one later. But over the course of time, you realize, and I think this is the message for the audience as well, that life is not linear, it's not binary, but also you can share your message in so many ways. So initially you were sharing your message in a classroom or in a school or in a university, right? But now it's a question, well, I can share that message to a much wider audience in a much more focused way. And that was through the book and through speaking, right?
Yeah, exactly. You hit it right on the head, Ed. Right on the head, Ed. When I looked at the message that I had, this was something I've been sharing with people for many years. Because as I went through rank through the military, really, started out as a private, and then made my way, became an officer, and then, retired as a major. The reality is many people looked at me and was always asking about my story, before I even thought about ever writing a book, because what I did, while I wasn't the first person to do it, it's not something that's common, and I was able to do something that many people ask you, how do you do that? How were you able to cross that track? How was you able to, make that transition? And it was just a matter of just doing it. So it was very simple. It was just a matter of, is this what you want? Then pursue it, and then jumping into academia after receiving my PhD, kind of along the same tracks. I come from this culture in the military where there's very few African-American officers. And then I jump into this culture, academia, and I find that same reality. There are very few African-American males, in academia or with a PhD. So here I go and I accomplished both of these things. And it became when people figured out my background from the past, because many people didn't know I was in the military, even in my academia setting. Yeah. They have no idea, because I guess the way I carry myself, my disposition, but many people had no concept I was in the military. And then many people, got whiffed of it. They were sharing that around. And many people asked me, well, how in the world you do this? And so I just kind of explaining the story piece by piece to people. And I realized I got to put this in a book form, because this story can impact lives, and how can I share my transformation from growing up in poverty, becoming a, low percentage African-American male to achieve rank of, field grade officer, and then transitioning out of that field and going into academia and obtaining my PhD. And I didn't really realize until I did some research that wasn't common for African-American males. I did not realize. So after realizing that, it was like, yeah, I most definitely got to put this in the book form, because this message has to get out there, have to share with more people than ones that's just in my direct environment, many people.
And at what stage do you think in your career did you realize, as you say, as an African-American man coming from a place of poverty and very humble beginnings, did you realize I can't have this? because it takes a change in mindset. I mean, you can be born incredibly driven and motivated, and we all know Oprah's story, but it also takes a degree of awareness to recognize I can have this and I can do this. Was that conscious for you?
I think the conscious part for me was, and I had, matter of fact, I had a recent conversation with my son, and we were talking about, he's in college now, and we were talking about, he's finally become aware of my upbringing through the book and things. And matter of fact, he was at my first speaking engagement. And he heard things that, I never really shared about them. My humble beginnings, they had no knowledge of. Their life has been totally different. So my upbringing was totally different from theirs. They live in a totally, different lifestyle. And that's good. But the reality for me was I was in an environment with the armed forces where, we just had to find a way to make it happen. Some of the things that we engaged in, either you win or lose. There is no middle ground, and you have to find a way. And I think that's the way I started to approach life. Early in my military career, unfortunately for me, I was, I had to go to war. Within the first 2 years, I was in the military. And that's being in that setting really changed how I view life. And it really changed how, okay, what do I want in this life? And what am I willing to sacrifice to get it? And I realized there's no excuse. Either you're going to do what you want or you're not. You just need to find a way to do it. And to make it sound simple, no, it really wasn't, because there was a lot of effort that had to go into that. Because as you know, when you're trying to achieve something, the hardest part is not having the answers, not knowing what direction to take. But once you get on that train, on that track, you realize how simple it is. But when you don't know that information, and that's the struggle for many people, that's the biggest challenge, is overcoming yourself. So being aware of that fact, I didn't make that something that was going to slow me down. I just kept plugging away, step by step to get to where I was trying to go. And the key thing was having a clear vision of what I wanted. Once I knew what I wanted, then I started moving towards it.
And I think that's one of the key tenets of the book, right? Is that if we look at the stories of highly successful people, it's always strategy and intention behind it. No one falls into these things. Yeah, sure, luck may come your way one day, but generally you've done a lot to create that. There's a lot of intention, like all the way through, your military career, and beginning to study when everyone was, going out to the mess or going out drinking, and you're just like, no, I'm studying for my first degree, and it's going to take me a long, long time. And it did take you a long time, but you got there. You got 5 of them now.
Yes.
Is you can get caught up in the crowd. You're in the military that's supposedly going to look after your career. If all goes well, you can have a long career. Though there is very little free thought in that process. I do a lot of work with the military over here in Australia, and what we realize is, because of the hierarchical nature of defense, right, of any defense force, is that ultimately you're going along with the tide. You're swimming with the tide.
Correct.
You're not necessarily, or you lose the ability for free thinking, because you're following a proven path. In your case, you actually had to break that mold, which is very difficult, particularly when you've come from when you're in a really powerful institution, whose levers are designed to put you in a place that they want, not what you want, what they want.
Yes.
And so that freedom of thinking, where does, I know you were the leader of your local Buddhist community. So where does that freedom of personal freedom come from? Because it has to be very powerful to enable you to do that, right? And it's not something you can teach. It's something that you've got to go looking for, and then be attracted to.
Yeah. It's so funny. I had many of my colleagues, peers, they tell me the same thing. they used to tell me, even when I was young in the military, you have the ability to be engaged in this environment, but not lose your sense of self.
Mhm.
Because I was very big into poetry. I was very big into art. I was very big into photography. So when I had my free time, I would always venture back into those worlds, and I never lost track of that inner sense of who I was, despite the fact that I was in this dominant and powerful environment that kind of really controlled your life. I'm not saying that lightly. It controlled your life. There were times in my life when I realized I didn't have a life. My life was defense to the nation, and whatever was required, I had to do. What was my personal concerns or desires was second nature. They were irrelevant, but I kept holding on to that. And I think that's the point. I think what you was trying to say, that's the reality of it. Because of where I came from, I never lost sense of who I was, and no institution was going to transform that. I came from nothing, so nobody was going to dictate to me what I was going to do now. Because in order for me to get to where I want to go, I had to truly be focused and determined about this is what I'm going to do. And I'll share a little story with you that's so funny. You talked about even when I was pursuing, because as you said, I have 5 academic degrees, and many of them was pursued while I was in the military. And I can recall on one activity, we were away. And we was, as officers, we stand in hotels, in a foreign country, and it's time to go out to drink, and I tell everybody, hey, I got to take care of some things tonight. I got some assignments I got to get done. I'm behind on some classwork. And don't they tried to bring the party to my room, with the bottles and come on, we got to. And it was, I told you, I got something to do. And if you come over here again, we're going to have a problem. Okay. That's how serious I was. And I was not following no crowd. I knew what I wanted. I knew the long-term vision I had for myself. And I utilized that strategic planning that the military taught me towards accomplishing wars. Now I use that plan to accomplish my goals. And that was going to get in the way of that. So when those free opportunities presented themselves, I took part in the things that I had to take care of instead of just, mellowing out, hanging out, and, doing whatever everybody else was doing. I wasn't worrying about what everybody else was doing because I had a long-term vision for my life.
Yeah, and I think, well, let's tap into that, because if the message is to help, the message is to help anyone, but particularly young, African-American men and women who are trying to forge their way in this world, right? Which is difficult for everybody and potentially even harder. So what we're talking about is intentionality and focus and strategy, all the things which in business we're used to all the time, right? But when you are teaching, how important is that message to anyone who is trying to change the nature of who they, not change the nature of who they are, change the nature of what they're going to do with their life and what society expects of them? Because we want to break all the rules forget about society. Like, society actually doesn't want you to be successful. Society really wants you to do what society wants you to do so that everything else runs accordingly, right? It has no interest in you. And if we look at the military as well, the military really has no interest in you, Major Erek Clacks. It only has an interest in you as a widget to put somewhere else that it needs you to do to manage its capability, right? Yeah. That's the nature of it. So what's the technique that you use to help people understand that that's not good enough?
Yeah.
Right. Where's the me in this space, and what do I have to do, and how do I go about, when we first met, I was talking about setting a new mission, right? Because your mission had been accomplished, like getting out of poverty. You're done when you were 20,
right?
You were a 50-year-old man saying, Ed, it's like, no, Eric, you did this 30 years ago. we got to redo it, right? It's really important, and everyone I see and everyone I work with is the same, is they accomplished their mission such a long time ago, and they hadn't realized they've got to set a new one all the time. So where is this in your message? Because to me, it's a really powerful place of we're not talking about goal setting, We're talking about reestablishing our path all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it never stops. I mean, you hit on a good point, Ed. And I remember coming to you, and I think that was my biggest frustration is why do I still got this mentality where I'm still running? I don't know where I'm running to no more because I've done everything I wanted to do. It's like, okay, where's this joy that's happening, this blissful place? But the reality was I haven't taken that step out of being of service to others to being of service to myself. I have never took that step to thinking I can live a certain way by doing the things that I want to do and still be of service to people. That was a challenge for me because everything I have done up to that to my point was of being service to other people. You know, and the military really ingrained that in you. So even though I had these other agendas on my plate, also things I want to do, what I tried to share, even with my students today, I really try to share with them, you know, the power of that inner self and understanding who you are and tapping into that and never losing sight of that inner voice. But then at the same time, this education that you're receiving is there to really help you open up your mind, to help you really understand, okay, what is it I'm trying to get out of this life? What is it I'm in pursuit of? And I really thought I had the answer, but in reality, you know, I wasn't doing what I needed to do for me. And I realized I had changed so much and had tapped into who I wanted to be that my environment, or even those close to me, the life that we always lived wasn't the life I wanted no more.
Yeah.
I know what I want, and that was the struggle for me.
Yeah. And I think that also you had such strong intentionality. You had believed that this is, you know, if I race forwards ahead and use my analytical, logical mind all the time to achieve these things, boom, 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 I will always get what I want. But in fact, ultimately, at some stage in life, you get this brick wall because we can't run that way anymore. It's like I remember having the conversation with your son about college. And it's like, well, I don't understand why he doesn't want to do this because he's not you. Yeah, you've created this beautiful family and privilege for your own kids that you never experienced. They have seen life entirely differently to you.
Right. Yeah.
And also, I think that the fundamental thing for you, I remember right at the beginning, you said, because we talked about journaling and how important journaling is to understand state of mind and how we feel. And you said you'd started writing poetry again. And for me, I think that was the time in your journey when that creativity you talked about that you kept through defense, I think you probably lost during academia.
Yes, I did. There was no time for the creativity no more. You know, I mean, academia, you have to follow, this is the line, this is what we have to do. And you get caught up in the creative stuff don't work. I have to follow these rules in order to get to where I'm trying to go, to get this degree, because these professors are the gatekeepers, right? And you can make it difficult on yourself if you want to, but it's going to be challenging enough as it is. So let's not cause more chaos, you know, to the situation that we in, and understand what's required to get to the objective. And through that process, I did start to lose a sense of, you know, my creativity, my inner voice, because I was in pursuit of this goal that required me to be a certain way. And I had to do things that way.
Yeah. And that's a very, even when you say it in that tone, it's a very masculine energy. Like it's very forceful, it's very dominant. And where I see you today, and I know the message in the book, and over the course of time, you have re-engaged with that creativity, with that feminine energy. And I see you today, it's like you sit so comfortably in that place. And to many people, they say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Well, one is directive and forceful. It's not designed to be directive and forceful, but it is, because that's the way we think that people respond to us.
Yeah.
However, when you respond coming from your heart and soul with empathy and compassion, and you have that for yourself, then others will respond to that message and that energy. But it's not something that people readily understand or accept in academia, in defense, in corporate world, because their language is so different. As a result, we lose touch with all the things which are designed to help us and protect us, like our intuition. You can't have that if you just spend this time hammering away all day long. So what happens is when our natural protective instincts are designed to kick in, the mind overrules them and we get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah, so true. So true. That's a very good point you made there. And we got to be mindful of that too. And I think the way society is set up, we have to realize that every situation we're in, every organization we exist in, there's rules and regulations for a purpose. They serve a purpose. But in reality, they are, to some degree, they are stifling. They are stifling to that creative being. They are stifling to that individual who wants to create something new, even within that institution, and get roadblocked because that's not the way we used to doing it. That's not the way we usually envision it, And so what happens to that individual? I mean, you're gonna run into a wall but so many times where you realize it ain't worth it no more. Okay, let me just do what I have to do. Now, within that institution, you lose a very important voice. And I think that is very unfortunate. And I recall that in the military, and I recall that even in academia in pursuit of my Ph.D. And as a professor now, I really try to be open with my students in their different approach to trying to solve and resolve issues in the way they present them. Like, you don't have to just do it this way. I really try to look for that creativity because I understand how you can stifle that very quickly. And the institutionalized, people within those institutions, I don't even think they really realize it because we have to maintain a certain standard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, let's touch on that for a second. So, so you just had a speaking gig. So where was the talk?
It was at a high school.
It was a high school. Okay, it's wonderful. So just share a little bit about this journey of speaking and what your intention is, because it's really powerful. So the intention behind your speaking gigs and how many lives you want to touch.
Sure, most definitely. So the book really illustrates, the message of overcoming adversity, self-transformation. And then the reality was, how do I get this message out to people? And my target audience, is really high school students and university students. Because within that setting, there's a transformation that they can really undergo if they really tap into their inner self and really apply themselves to move forward and grow. So the reality is, within the connections that I had once the book came out, many people have read it, and then, people are asking me, hey, can you come speak at, my school? Can you come speak at this institution? And I was hesitant for a minute trying to figure out how to go about that process. But once I figured it out, I jumped into it. And then I had the opportunity this past week to participate in my first one. And it was something that gave me a joy beyond imagination. It was something that tapped into, this is why you're here. This is why you exist. This is why you went through all these things to get to this stage in your life, to give this message to these young people to help them understand whatever it is they're dealing with. If they have the desire to achieve something, they can. It is possible with effort, with commitment, with resolve. The possibility is there. You know why? Because I did it. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. It's not just, you can do it. And it's so funny because a lot of times we see people achieve great things, but you see it on after they've done it. But you don't see that road they traveled, 10, 20, 30 years prior, and all the lessons learned or all the struggles they endure. You see the end result, and too many people get caught, especially young people, thinking it's just an overnight thing. No, it's a process. And through the book and through the speaking engagements is what I share with them. And I usually take from this presentation, I took about 3 main goals, topics from the book. So I talked about the importance of goal setting. I talked about the importance of leaving your comfort zone. And I talked the importance of time management, because these are the 3 things that students really struggle with. And at the beginning of my speaking engagement, what I usually do is I started off very powerfully talking about my past, poverty, no role models, dysfunctional family, lack of resources, and talk about some of my struggles. And then what I ask is a question, after they hear my struggles, because everybody got their issues. I already know it. Okay. Now, how many of you are coming to school giving 100%. I would imagine about half would raise their hand. I don't think I got 5% raise their hand.
Wow.
What about 90%? Maybe another 5%. What about 80? What about 70? I said, we're not going below 70 because what I'm going to give you is some strategies to help you operate, at a higher percent when you walk into this building. When I realized just from that beginning 10 minutes of my presentation, that these young people, even though they're at a predominant, a school where they have many resources, they ain't not at the school I came from, where we had basically nothing. They have many resources. They're not taking advantage of them, nor are they coming to school with a purpose.
Yeah, well, I think, Eric, wow, we could do a whole different podcast just on the state of education and that sense of purpose. I was helping a friend out recently with their about to be 17-year-old daughter, and she's like, well, I've got to decide age 17 or 16, 17, what university do I study, law, or do I study doing something creative, fashion and textile? And it's like, well, my view is you don't have to make that decision today, because society tells you, well, you're 18, you might take a gap year. Then in Europe, but they tend to take gap years, and then they go to university, and 3 years is university in Europe, not 5 in Australia. America's slightly different as well. And then you've got to start your career. It's like, wow, look at us, Eric. We're about the same age. We're about 25, right?
Exactly. Forever 25.
But the reality is you're in your early 50s, right? You've just started a new career, a new one, right? In your 50s, speaking and writing, like same as me. This is what we do. We teach, we help, we coach, we write, we share that message with the world. And we're starting a new one. You don't need the answer when you're 16 or 17, but I do agree with you that the sad reality is if we don't get the message to the 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids before they decide, even if universities, if that's the right format for them, is that the right place for them to learn? Is their brain ready to absorb that information? Are they ready from a social perspective to go and put themselves in that place? But they're all told you either do this or you're going to fail or you need to go and learn a trade. It's like, that is not life, is it? I mean, you're an academic, you're a professor, but getting that message out to them to find whatever is inside of them. And if they can't find it, it's okay not to find it yet, right? I mean, you didn't have a choice, right? You came from a place where if I stay in this place, I will probably end up, I imagine, dead or in a very, very bad place, right?
Yes. Yeah. So my situation was, I didn't have where society is telling these young people, your next step is, college, to go to the workforce. Not really giving them that time to really find out who they are, use their education to really, understand who they are and to gain information. It's a journey. They're not taught that, unfortunately. And that, like you say, that's another topic in itself. But the reality is, for me, I came from an environment where there was such a lack of hope that we had a future, that we could accomplish anything, to the fact I used to have to ignore people, even family members, when I used to share what I'm thinking about, because I was told one time, you can't do that. You realize you can't do that. And to me, it was, why not? Why not? But I've learned that, people come from a place that don't mean to hurt you. They just come from a place because of their realization, and where they're at with their life. But I learned to not listen to other people and just listen to myself, because I had no one to tell me the things that I was attempting to trying to do. Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Nobody. So I told nobody. I just did it. I just did it and just relied on myself. This is the life I'm going to create for myself, because where I'm coming from, there's nothing here. And I'm not going to a university because my high school experience wasn't nurturing. My high school experience wasn't enriching or something that motivated me even think about college. College was not even an option, And because I had so much energy and so much enthusiasm for life, just having a high school diploma gave me an option. And what happened was I found something I was really passionate about, something I was good at. And once I realized what I was good at, I realized I can take the same energy, the same drive, and apply it to whatever it is I want to do moving forward. Anything I want to do, it's going to require the same energy and that drive. And that's exactly what I did.
And can you share the story of you joining the military? Because I remember you told me this earlier, and if I recall, it wasn't something which is like, I'm 15, I'm only ever want to work for,
Oh, yeah.
for Uncle Sam. Like, it wasn't like that. So
No.
can you share your journey?
Matter of fact, like many people, you don't know much about the military. You see it in movies, you may see an advertisement on TV, but you don't really understand what the nation defense is really about, what it really consists of, what it really has to offer. So for me, seeing the road those who preceded me and seeing the road that some were on, as I was traveling along with them peers, I realized this environment, some way, some shape or form, I have to leave because there's nothing here for me. I'm not going to go to college. Everybody's either blue collar worker and struggling just to pay bills. I don't want that lifestyle. That's just more the same. What can I do to give me an opportunity? And it was going into the military, because the reality is I had a family member who was in the military. Didn't see him much, but he did come home on leave every now and then. And there was something about him. He seemed to live with a purpose. He came from the same situation. But he seemed to move and live a little bit different than everybody else. And I seen that in him. And even though I didn't have a big understanding of the military, I knew it was an opportunity for me to leave this environment, to expose me to something else, and maybe be able to benefit me moving forward. And what I realized is once I got there, with all the resources, I can take advantage of everything. Every opportunity presented itself, I would take advantage of to enhance my growth and development, to try to move my life forward. So every resource that the nation had with us as service members to us, I took advantage of it.
Yeah, and one of the good things about, it depends which country you're in, is there is a lot of training, and also with rank. As you go through ranks, like if you become an officer, you need a degree, right? So you've got to go and study, and you get different diplomas and all the way through that. So it does provide you that mechanism. Mm-hmm. So I think, one of the lessons for young people as well, and it doesn't really matter whether you're young or old, but is the commonality with what you did and many others has done is you've said, I don't know what I want. I don't know. I cannot answer the question, what do I want today? And we see this for many people at all ages. I don't know what I want anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. Not knowing what you want is absolutely fine, but you've got to do something about it, right?
Yes.
And in your cases, I don't know anything about defense. I don't know what I'm going to do. And if I know what I'm going to do, I probably don't want to do it anyway. But I see this guy, I'm going to go and try.
Yep.
And I'm going to try my hardest and see what happens. And it's that message. Just go and test it. Mm-hmm. See what happens. If it doesn't work, fine. But give it your 100% of everything to see what you get out of it.
Exactly. Because the reality is we can't achieve anything if we don't even try. We can hope all we want, but if we don't take that risk or that chance, whatever it is you want to call it, we can't get nowhere. So at some point, I had to take a risk. And that's exactly what I did. I took, okay, I see what this can be. Let me go and try and see. Because nothing is forever, go in, list for a couple of years, then it's over. It's your choice. But I can go try and see what I can make of it. And I think the most important thing that I did, I was open-minded to everything. So when the opportunities presented themselves, I was the first one to raise my hand. Yep, I'll do it. And that's the reality. That's how I kept moving up, because I was always, it was no need for me to sit and try to live in a comfortable life and go to work and just come home. No, I wasn't living like that. I was trying to move my life forward. So every opportunity that presented itself, I was volunteering for. And people see when you're doing that. People see when you're outgoing. People see when you're the one willing to make sacrifices. And that's exactly how I just kept moving up, kept moving up, kept moving up. You know, and that's the same way in life. You know, we got to take these chances. Even what I'm doing today, even sharing this message, there's no role laid out for me. I got to figure this a journey. I just figure it out as I move forward, you know, and take information, you know, and just keep moving.
And if you think about it, right, if we look at the statistics, so here you are, you're an academic, right? You were a year ago, you were an academic who didn't know what you want. He's like, am I going to be a superintendent or am I going to teach it? I don't know which one. It's like, you're not going to do either, Eric, but we'll get to that one later.
Your insight used to blow me away. It used to blow me away.
Well, the thing is, it's just me. All I'm doing is I can see that inside you. You just can't see it inside yourself yet. That's all it is, right? And you understand that now,
right?
But if we look at it, you're an academic, so you've written all sorts of scholarly articles. You've been published many, many times. Writing a book about yourself is at a very different space. Getting on a stage, I mean, getting into a classroom and teaching is great. You're subject matter expert, you're a professor. Everyone is like, thank you, Eric, thank you, professor. When you walk into a high school of 1,000 kids who don't know, he's like, well, they might not even listen to anything you say in that 45 minutes, right? They're thinking about their lunch and what they're going to do later.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a very, very different world. And even so, you've still got to put yourself out there. Even, you know, writing your first book, there are 350,000 books published a year, right? The average book sells 300 copies. And I think something like 70 or 80% of all books written have never been published.
Wow. Yeah.
So you think about that and you can think of how easy it is to say, I'm just never going to do it. Or I want to be a speaker, but I'm never going to do that because I'm in corporate America, it's got more speakers than anywhere else on the planet.
Exactly.
I mean, as you would have heard this, right?
Yeah.
It's just saturated with speakers. So you give that information, oh no, I won't do it. Or university's hard, oh, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
It's the fact is that is you listening to an external force.
Yep.
Convincing yourself that you're not good enough. And we don't get anywhere in life by doing that. You've got to take a risk. And sometimes the risk pays off and sometimes it doesn't, right? You know,
you made very important. That's a very important point you made, Ed. Very important. And I used to say in the beginning, I think I was more naive than anything when I used to try different stuff. I just didn't know, and I really didn't care. Because I had learned so early on in my young life, being told what I couldn't do, that I learned how to block out the noise. And as I moved forward life, I never even paid attention, you know? And, you know, as you travel around the globe, you know, you start going to different countries. I mean, you can't watch TV as much because you can't even listen, you know the language. So all those external things that's telling you stuff and giving you messages, they were no more in my life. Only thing I was hearing was what I wanted to do. I never heard the statistics, never knew this, never knew that, never knew how many less Black officers. I never knew, never even cared. It was a matter of this is what I want. And these are steps I need to take to get it. So move forward. And just being blind to that information, I think was, again, it helped, it served me well. Even at the stage where I'm at now, it's like I don't listen to it because if it doesn't empower me, I don't need it.
Well, there's a lot to be said. I mean, I haven't watched, our family doesn't watch TV, right? We haven't for years. So I have, the only access to news is through the internet, right? That's it. But you can be consumed by that, but we don't have the news on, right? So the children listen to the news, and my 11-year-old told me the day before yesterday, she woke up having had a nightmare about the Russians invading our home and everything else. So this is an 11-year-old. That's not good, right, at all. But there is a lot to be said, and I'm a big advocate of this. It's like, get rid of social media, get rid of all the news. Do not have any external influence. Stop taking stimulants, coffee, caffeine, alcohol. Like, clear everything, which is going to cloud your judgment and your path for you then to figure out what's the answer. The trouble with that, though, of course, as we know, is that if you try and answer the question with your head, you're never going to be able to answer it, right? So we have to answer the question with our heart and our soul. We've got to dig into how we feel intuitively about these situations, which is very hard. And look, let's not make light of it. You know, you were the head of your Buddhist community. You have had a spiritual faith for forever, right? And very profound. And, you know, it's the same community that Tibetan Buddhism thing, which I practice. Yet you still couldn't answer the question. And yet you had all the information right there for you. And it's getting outside of that information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have gone back and read the Buddhist texts, right? And you would have the answers right there in front of us, right there in front of us. So why do you think, Erek, in that situation, that you've got all that information, yet you still can't see the way out?
Yeah. And I think it ties into just all the other institutions I've been a part of. And the reality is information, you know, and it's how we want to use that information. Everybody has a philosophy, and we use things that benefit us. And I always use the great analogy, and I share with people because I'm a physical fitness, you know, guy. And I say, you know, you can come into the gym, and I may, you know, use this piece of equipment, and you may use that piece of equipment. What you're trying to search for is just something that benefits your life. And what I have gotten to a point with, even with my, you know, the military, the academia, and then even my, you know, religious faith, was, okay, how is these things benefit my life, and how is it helping me move forward? And I wasn't seeing any forward progress with my life. It was, yes, I was contributing and supporting people, but there was no growth for me. I had tapped out a while ago, you know, and the reality was I knew I had tapped out. But I was just continuing to go through the motions, supporting other people. But reality, there was nothing for me. So if you're not gaining something what you're doing, or joyful at what you're doing, well, I continue with it. You don't have to. You choose the life you want to live. And when people start to dictate to me and tell me what I had to do, then we had to stop it. You know, because again, going back to youth, you know,
I was going to say, yeah,
I'm troubled when somebody tells me what I have to do, because that's no more than, you know, a system that wants to use you as a source to benefit, you know, their ends. And I understand that. I understand how institutions work, you know, but that part right there was time for me to move in a different direction. Okay. Because this is not helping me get to where I need to get. It's not helping me, you know, unlock my full unlimited potential to live the life that I truly desire. And I don't need to have restraints on me. And it was an easy decision from there.
Yeah, it's an easy decision when you understand what it means to live your life to its fullest potential.
Yes.
And that you are allowed to live your life to its fullest potential. I mean, I can't remember how many conversations I have with people, and they say, I want to live my life to my fullest potential. I want to go and do something for myself. I say, well, go and sell one of your houses then. Go and live in a smaller house. No, I can't possibly do that. Well, then go away and come back when you have. Because if you don't change the dynamic of what you are doing, nothing else is going to change.
Exactly.
Right? If you want to continue living the lifestyle you're living, that's costing you a certain amount of money, and you want freedom, well, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing something that you hate? Where's the freedom in that? Yeah. And I think it's very hard, Erek, for people of any age, doesn't matter whether you're 16, 18, or 40 or 50, to recognize that you have, you know, we live in Western democracies, right? We live in supposedly free countries, yet actually what you see in the news and what you hear and people talking about is they're trying to limit your freedom as best they possibly can. The intention is not to have you as a free person. The intention is to have you controlled, coerced into a way of thinking and doing so that it benefits somebody else. And the recognition that it's not selfish, as you made. And you remember you saying, Ed, it's not selfish to be wealthy and of service. It's like, that's mind-blowing. Whereas now, here we are sitting here. Now you're like, seriously, do I really have to say that to myself? It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not selfish to live the life that you desire. And it's so unfortunate that, you know, we get so caught up in this mindset. The propaganda overpowers people.
Mm.
And we just continue just to follow them. And you know what? It is so hard to get off that track once you on it, because what you have to do, you have to internalize and you have to think, and then you have to make a choice. And that choice is going to require you to change behaviors and change actions. And that's what people don't want to do.
Yeah.
There's a risk. There's a risk involved, you know, and you have to make that choice, you know. So if you truly want to be free to live that life you desire, you're going to have to take some risks. And I mean, it ain't going to be clear, but that's a choice you got to make. And if it doesn't work out, guess what? Choose another route, you know, but you're never going to know unless you try.
Yeah.
You're never going to know. You be that person always talk about I coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be that person, even as a young person.
And that's the point. And I think the interesting thing is if you look at all of this, right, is that as a young person, you had a different attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember the other people who've been on the podcast who've been in similar positions, you know, one guy who was shot through the car window, him and his cousin was shot. And he said, you know, I always knew I had a choice. It's like I always knew there was this side of the road where I was literally getting shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the other side of the road. And I knew the other side of the road was really quite interesting because it was just very different. But I knew it was there and it felt good. But you've got to be able to see that and actually want to go in that direction. So you've got to, as you say, even as a kid, you had to open your mind to there is something else. This is not the only way. And it's interesting if you look at the people who've stepped out of that scenario as to, you know, the process of that, because it doesn't happen to everybody.
No, and it's a challenge. And I use it in simple terms as stepping outside your comfort zone. But the reality is you have to overcome attachments. Some attachments you got to let go of. And it's a reality. And even the road that I've traveled, you know, I have to let go of a lot of people along that journey because they weren't bringing any value into my life. There was no benefit to it. They wanted to keep me right where they were at. I would love you to the day I die. But the reality is the way you're thinking, I can't think like that. And I can't pursue that. And you can do the things you want to do, but you know, there's some other things I have to do. You don't have to agree with them, but it's not your choice. It's not for you to concern yourself with what I'm doing. I'm going to do it anyway. And I think that's the hard part for people. We get stuck with attachments because of the propaganda and the way we've been programmed for so long. And it entrenches us to the way that we're living. Even though we can see different, you know, that challenge is us having to step outside that comfort zone and step into that unknown. And everybody don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, they don't want to do it. And then, you know, as we talk about in the process of transformation, one of the hardest steps in it is that we know when you go through that, and this is really important. When you go through your own personal transformation, the chances are that those people around you who love you, who are really close to you, are going to notice that. And a lot of the times they don't even like it. It's like, you're changing. And I don't like the fact you're changing because it makes them uncomfortable. And also that they feel that maybe they're going to lose you because you don't need them.
Yes.
And so having the conversation, doesn't matter whether you're 16 years old or you're 60. It's when you're going the process of change is to talk to the people close to you and they say, well, you're changing. Yeah, I am changing for myself because I don't like the person I am. I have so much more to offer, and I'm not pushing you away in the process of me changing. This is something I'm doing for myself.
Yeah.
Now, I can't tell you whether marriages will survive or fail, or relationships will survive or fail, because that's part of what happens. And we've been through this. But I think it's really important for people to understand that people will notice. And when they say you're changing, like, yeah, damn right I'm changing.
Yeah.
I need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to feel fearful of someone saying that because they think they're losing you. Well, they might do if they don't serve you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. But that's hard, right? I mean, we go through this. We're both married. We got kids, and when we go through our own transformation, it's a challenge, isn't it, Eric?
It's very much a challenge. It's a very hard challenge when those closest to you say those things to you, because what they don't realize how hurtful it is, how painful it is. Even in my case, to have parents tell me, you've changed, you think you're better than everybody. No, one, I have changed. I need to change. And where I want my life to go requires for me to change. Me thinking I'm better than them? No, just because I think differently now. I don't think along the same lines. We can have the same conversations and me just agree. No, I don't agree. I know too much. Okay. And that's my responsibility, because I've educated myself to share that knowledge. Do I know it all? No, but I'm not going to sit here and continue to listen to the same, nonsense that make no sense, nor does it enhance our life and think it's okay. No, it's not okay. Okay. And you have to respect that, just like I can respect your words, and I'm going to continue to move in the direction I want to move in. But for me to sit still and not take action to move my life where I want to move it to, and that's going to require me to change, so be it. You got to accept that. You got to accept me. You can't look at it from the perspective of, he's outside of, I'm outside the circle. Well, but I still love you, and I think that's the part that they struggle with. They're losing you. You're not thinking amongst the tribe no more like everybody else think. No, I'm trying to lead the tribe in a different direction because of information.
Yeah, and I think also, we have to be clear about what we mean and say. I remember working with someone and their parents were abusive to them, emotionally, psychologically abusive to them. And they said they managed to sever the relationship once it was a Christmas day, and they said, "Are you coming to visit your grandchildren?" "No, I'm not. I've got something better to do." And the son said, "Well, I love you and I value and respect you, but I don't want to see you anymore." And I said, "Why did you say that? I love you, I value, I respect you." "Because you don't. You don't love them. Mm-hmm. They mean nothing to you now in your life. Mm-hmm. You certainly don't respect them and you value them. So even when you break the tie, if that's what you have to do, we're not advocating everyone has to go and break the tie, but if you do, remember that if you don't feel that, you don't have to say it just to make them feel good. If you truly love them, let them know. And we've talked about this. I love you, but that conversation doesn't work for me. So I'm going to leave. Yeah. And I will come back. But if you don't, if they're hurting you nonstop, you don't even have to say that. You can just walk away. Yeah. And that's very hard. Yeah. But we have to be adults at some point. We have to be. We're not all. Yeah. We're not 12-year-old boys anymore. Yeah. Exactly. The mind might think we are, but we're not. Got to take responsibility for our life at some point, or we just continue to be followers. And those be the same people that don't take those risks to live their greatest life. Mm. You can't have it both ways. And I think one of the real elements of when you go through this personal growth, and obviously it's quite interesting, and you would have seen this in your Buddhist community as well, is people go through these huge transformations in life and they suddenly feel that because they have ascended into some miraculous place that then superior. It's like, well, once you think you're superior because you have knowledge, you trash the notion of spirituality. Right? Yeah. Right. It's gone. So, we're always recalibrating. Yeah, I'm just here to share this. Like I'm sure you are on your stage. I'm here to share the message. I hope you take that on board. I'm not any better than you. I just have learned the information. This is how I'm applying it. Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. So, what's the plan, Eric, from here on in as we begin to wrap up? What's the plan for the next 6 to 12, apart from snowboarding and all the other stuff that you love to do? Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, because that is the plan. The reality is Utah just got a big dump, a foot of snow. Looked at on the news, and I was thinking, this is why I need a private plane.
'cause I need to get out there and I need to be out there this weekend. But the reality is that's a life I want to live. I don't need an occupation where I got to be running around 12 months a year no more. I need time where I can do the things that I want to do and really figure out the direction I want my life to go in and how I want to live it. So what I really want to do is I'm gonna continue to get my message out there. This motivational speaker. I mean, this is what I'm going to do because I feel I have a message I want to share with the world, and I'm going to get that message out there because the excitement and the joy that it brings me is I couldn't imagine feeling so joyful for bliss when I gave that speech to those students and realized. And the reality is when I left and I stood in the hallway and as they passed me, many of them were so appreciative. Sure, you're not going to get everybody, but there were some people that needed to hear that. And they were so appreciative. And then the feedback that I received for the surveys, I mean, just blew me away. Blew me away. Because you gave them something that was strategic, but it was simplified with it. Yes, I can use this in my life. I understand this. This makes sense, and it gave them hope. And that's what gave me the most joy because in my youth, I needed to hear that because nobody was telling me that. Nobody was telling me I could do what I wanted to do, and I see how powerful that is. And that's what I'm going to get on. I'm going to just continue to get better at this and continue to share this message. And my goal is to take it to the world. That's the next chapter.
Yeah. So how do people find you if there's someone listening who wants to book Erek for their high school or their university or their business, or there's a bureau, a speakers bureau who says, this man, I must have him in my message. Where do they find you? How do they come and find you?
Most definitely. You can find me at my website, erekclacks.com. Now the name Erek is spelled differently. It's spelled E-R-E-K. Okay. Echo Romeo, Echo Kilo. Clacks, CLACKS.com. And I spell that because if you say Erek, everybody's going to go to the natural, the way you always heard it. So it's a little different. So ErekClacks.com, where you can find me, where you can book me, where you can find the book. You can find information about my story. And, just little, clippings and different things that I've done so far up to this point. But that's exactly where you can find me.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, and that'll be on the show notes as well for everyone. And I think you're talking about giving the speech is one of the things which is really you'll find this over the course of time is when you get one of those students who in 5 years and 10 years sends you a message, say, Erek, I didn't really understand it at the time, and I didn't put anything on my feedback form, but I tell you what, that speech has inspired me to go and do this, and that gives you goosebumps when just knowing that sharing that message. And I think one of the other really important messages from what you're sharing today in this podcast today is when we have information which is available to people, share it, because you know what, it's not the people who say, I want to shake your hand, Erek, and give you a hug and thank you so much. They're the ones who are absorbing and ready and all that information.
Right.
It's the person who is scared to come and say hello. It's the person who is so confused inside that they can't do it. They're the ones, the silent observers, who go away and they think about it and they listen to it and they think about it and they go and start doing things. They're the ones.
Most definitely.
That change the world, right? Because then you've changed someone at their core. You've really ignited that fire in them. And that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I've really experienced that through just academia, students who have gone on and graduated, we didn't talk much. And you get an email a couple of years later, talk about how this, and they can tell you exactly when you say this, that struck a chord, then I started doing this, and they reached back and that's what I realized the power of me sharing my message. It ain't the impact, even though, you're going to have some that get it right then and there. It's what you're sharing. Some people need to hear that. And they might not get it, but, they heard it. And then as they move forward through life, it starts to make sense to them. Now they have knowledge that they can use, and that's the beauty of what I do.
Yeah. And I think that's the key point is motivation is one thing, inspiration is another, right? That's wonderful, but nothing happens if you take action. And I think what the book shows you is you show this incredibly strategic, intentional focus all the way through. This is how I did. And you give them, if you read the book, and I encourage you to do, everyone to do that, because it actually tells you steps that you went through.
Exactly.
To get yourself from A to B. But you
Exactly.
do that not just like a prescriptive text. You also get us insight. You do open yourself. You open your soul a little bit in there. You can just see little flutters here and there of you as a human being.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I encourage everyone to do that. But also, if you have a message and you want to share that, go and share that. And it doesn't matter if it's 10 people or 100 or 1,000 or more. If you can impact one person's soul, then they're going to do that, and it impacts another and another and another, and you have the ripple effect. So don't feel that no one wants to hear your message.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And I tell everybody has a story, and we continue to write it. We continue to write it every day as we live. You know, so don't undermine your story. You know, it's so important.
Erek, as usual, it is a privilege to talk to you. I'm so very happy that you know, we were able to work together, and that you put your hand up for help. But nowadays, look, for me, everything that you're telling the world about how it makes you, how happy it makes you, this is how I feel. I see you go from incredible service man to now serving the world, and it's like, this is what I do. This is what I do. What I do, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for your journey as well, and thank you for being here today.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity, Ed.
Well, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please leave a review and subscribe. That way more people get to hear about the show. And if you want to reach out, you can find me at edandrew.com, and on the website edandrew.com. Otherwise, I wish you all a wonderful week and speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye.